He felt splintered wood slice through his palms, only to see saviors emerge from the crowd before darkness closed in. The late afternoon sun, a bruised orange, bled across the cracked pavement as 72-year-old Arthur Finch eased his weight onto his right crutch, the worn rubber tip finding a familiar divot in the concrete. Each step was a testament to quiet endurance, a careful negotiation between lingering pain and stubborn independence. A faded army green jacket, a relic from a war fought decades ago, hung loosely on his frame, its patches barely visible beneath the dust of time. He'd seen worse days, certainly, but few that carried such a heavy silence, such a profound sense of being utterly alone in a city that roared around him. The hum of distant traffic was a dull throb in his ears, a counterpoint to the soft rasp of his own breathing. Just get to the bus stop, Arthur. Just get there. His left leg, a phantom limb of agony, ached with a deep, bone-weary protest. His gaze, though clouded by age and fatigue, held a quiet dignity, a residual glint of the fire that had once burned brightly in distant deserts. He moved with the slow, deliberate rhythm of a man who understood the value of each forward motion, however small. The city, a blur of hurried faces and indifferent glances, paid him no mind. He was just another old man, an anonymous figure navigating the indifferent currents of urban life. A sudden gust of wind, carrying the faint scent of exhaust fumes and rain, tugged at his jacket, chilling him to the bone. He tightened his grip on the crutches, knuckles white against the dull metal. A group of young men, their laughter sharp and dissonant, materialized from a nearby alleyway. Their voices, loud and unburdened, cut through the city's drone, a discordant melody that grated on Arthur's nerves. He instinctively shifted his weight, trying to appear smaller, less noticeable, a lifetime of avoiding unnecessary conflict etched into his weary posture. Their shadows stretched long and distorted in the dying light, creeping closer with an unsettling deliberation. The air suddenly felt thick, heavy with unspoken menace. He could feel the hairs prickle on the back of his neck, a primal warning system, honed by years of living on the edge. One of them, taller than the others, with a sneer that seemed permanently etched onto his face, detached himself from the group, his eyes, cold and devoid of empathy, fixed on Arthur's crutches. A wave of apprehension, cold and sharp, washed over the old veteran. No, not today. Please, not today. He tried to quicken his pace, but his body, loyal but weary, refused to obey. The pavement seemed to stretch endlessly before him, each foot an insurmountable distance. The sound of their approaching footsteps grew louder, more distinct, a rhythmic thud against the asphalt. The thug, his movements fluid and predatory, stepped directly into Arthur's path. "Well, well, what have we here?" he drawled, his voice laced with mocking amusement. His companions chuckled, a low, guttural sound that seemed to vibrate in Arthur's chest. The other thugs fanned out, forming a semicircle, effectively trapping him. He was a lone island, in a sea of hostile faces, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. The scent of cheap cologne and stale cigarettes hung heavy in the air, sickeningly sweet. Arthur tried to sidestep, his crutches scraping against the rough concrete, but another thug, equally lean and menacing, blocked his escape. "Where you going, old man?" he sneered, a glint of cruel anticipation in his eyes. A sick dread settled in Arthur's stomach. He looked around desperately, but the street was empty, the usual rush-hour traffic a distant memory. No one to see, no one to care. "I fought in a desert for freedom. How did I end up broken on cracked pavement?" Before we continue with the story, be sure to let us know where you're watching from and what time it is in the comments. We love learning about our viewers. Now let's get back to the story. The first thug, without warning, raised a heavy stick he'd seemingly pulled from nowhere. It glinted ominously in the fading light. Arthur instinctively flinched, bracing for impact, his muscles tensing, a desperate, futile defense. His hands, gnarled and scarred, tightened around the grips of his crutches, his only support against the encroaching darkness. A cold sweat beaded on his forehead, tracing a path down his weathered temple. The silence stretched, taut and suffocating, punctuated only by the shallow gasps of his own fear. Then, with a savage yell, the thug swung the stick down. It wasn't aimed at Arthur directly, but at the fragile wooden shaft of his right crutch. The impact was brutal, a sickening crack that echoed in the sudden hush. Splinters flew, stinging Arthur's hands as the wood gave way with a mournful groan. He felt the jarring jolt travel up his arm, a searing pain that shot through his shoulder. The sudden loss of support sent him reeling. He stumbled, his balance gone, his bad leg collapsing beneath him. The world tilted, the streetlights blurring into streaks of white. He hit the rough asphalt with a sickening thud, his left hip taking the brunt of the fall. A sharp cry of pain escaped his lips, quickly drowned out by the jeering laughter of the thugs. The taste of dust and blood filled his mouth. His remaining crutch clattered uselessly beside him, a broken testament to his helplessness. The pain was immediate, brutal, and encompassing. As he lay sprawled, a helpless heap on the cold, unforgiving ground, the laughter seemed to grow louder, more derisive, a symphony of cruelty. Cell phones emerged from pockets, their lenses glowing red, recording his humiliation, his fragile dignity shattering under the harsh glare of their screens. The broken crutch lay beside him, a fractured limb, mirroring his own shattered strength. He looked up, his eyes wide with a mixture of pain and disbelief, and saw the distorted faces of his tormentors, their expressions twisted into masks of grotesque amusement. The snap of fractured wood echoed in his ears. The red recording lights of the cell phone cameras glowed like malevolent eyes, each one a tiny beacon of his public shaming. Arthur, still sprawled on the grimy asphalt, pushed himself onto his elbows, a ragged gasp escaping his lips. The sharp edges of the broken crutch, lying inches from his outstretched hand, seemed to mock his vulnerability. His hip throbbed with a dull, insistent ache, a constant reminder of his sudden fall. He could feel the coarse grit of the street against his cheek, the cold seeping into his bones. His breath hitched in his throat, a raw, rattling sound. This is it then. This is how it ends. The thugs circled him like vultures, their shadows dancing grotesquely in the street lamp's nascent glow. Their laughter, no longer just a sound, felt like a physical assault, battering him from all sides. "Look at the old man crawl," one of them jeered, his voice high-pitched and gleeful. Another nudged his head with a foot, a casual, contemptuous gesture that sent a jolt of anger through Arthur, hot and fleeting. He closed his eyes for a moment, wishing for oblivion, for the earth to swallow him whole. The stench of stale beer and unwashed bodies hung heavy in the air around them. He opened his eyes again, slowly, and met the gaze of the lead thug, the one with the sneer. There was no pity, no remorse, only a cold, calculating cruelty. A wave of profound weariness washed over Arthur, a fatigue that went beyond physical pain. He was not just broken, he was exposed, his every weakness laid bare for their amusement and for the unseen eyes of the internet. The thought of this moment, this degradation, being broadcast to countless strangers, filled him with a bitter shame. Decades of service, for this. Despite the pain, despite the humiliation, a flicker of defiance ignited within him, a spark from the ember of his past. He had faced down greater dangers than these street rats. He had endured far worse. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. He looked up, his gaze steady, meeting the thug's sneer with a silent challenge. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but it was his. The effort sent a fresh jolt of pain through his hip, but he gritted his teeth, refusing to flinch. One of the thugs, emboldened by Arthur's stillness, kicked his remaining crutch further out of reach. It skittered across the pavement, coming to rest near the curb. "Lost your stick, Grandad?" he taunted, a smirk spreading across his face. The casual brutality of the act was a fresh wound. Arthur's hands clenched into fists, useless against the overwhelming odds. His body, however, remained still, a testament to a resolve that had weathered countless storms. He could feel the vibrations of the cell phones in their hands, recording every agonizing second. The taunts continued, a relentless barrage of verbal abuse, chipping away at his already fragile composure. He could feel the hot flush of humiliation creeping up his neck. His vision, already blurred from the fall, started to swim as the pain intensified. He tried to push himself up again, slowly, painstakingly, but his arm trembled with the effort, and he slumped back down, a whimper escaping his lips. The laughter grew louder, more triumphant, fueled by his perceived helplessness. "They want to see me break. I won't." Miles away, in a quiet suburban gym, two off-duty Special Forces soldiers, brothers in arms, were wrapping up their evening workout. Sergeant First Class David Miller, lean and coiled, was wiping sweat from his brow when his phone buzzed. His friend Staff Sergeant Mark Johnson, equally fit and focused, glanced over, noting the sudden furrow in David's brow. The gym's muted music provided a stark contrast to the unfolding chaos across the city. They were discussing tactics, the mundane rhythm of their lives, utterly unaware of the veteran's plight. David's eyes widened as he watched the shaky video feed. The familiar sound of splintering wood, the old man's cry of pain, the jeering laughter, it all cut through him like a blade. His jaw tightened, a muscle jumping in his cheek. "Mark, look at this," he said, his voice low, clipped, and laced with an unfamiliar fury. Mark leaned in, his gaze quickly scanning the screen. The scene, raw and unvarnished, played out before them, a testament to human cruelty. The sight of the elderly veteran, helpless on the ground, ignited a cold rage in both men. Recognition flickered in Mark's eyes. "Is that a veteran?" he asked, his voice rough. The faded army green jacket, even through the grainy video, was unmistakable. The contempt on the thugs' faces, the sheer, unadulterated malice, made his stomach clench. He had seen evil before, in the crucible of war, but this was different, more insidious, an attack on the innocent and vulnerable on their own streets. His hands, still strong, from his workout, clenched into fists. Without a word, David grabbed his keys. "We're going," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet radiating an undeniable resolve. He didn't need to say where. The address was already being pulled up on his phone, pinpointed by a quick geolocation. Mark nodded, already shedding his gym shirt, his muscles flexing beneath his skin. The camaraderie of their service, a bond forged in fire, propelled them forward. The veteran's trembling defiance beneath viral disgrace would not go unanswered. The thunder of unmarked boots cut through mocking laughter. The soldiers' silent code, etched deep into their very being, activated with chilling precision. David's eyes locked onto the nearest thug, a lanky youth, with a sneer frozen on his face, and charged. His movements were fluid, economical, a blur of controlled aggression. Mark, a beat behind, chose his target, with equal swiftness, a thick-necked bully, still engrossed in recording the veteran's humiliation. The air, thick with tension, and the stench of fear, seemed to crackle around them as they moved. The stunned hush of bystanders began to spread, their collective gasp a wave that rippled through the previously indifferent crowd. The first thug barely registered the approaching blur before David's fist connected with his jaw. It was a clean, precise strike, honed by years of rigorous training, designed to incapacitate without excess. The sound was a dull thud, followed by a grunt of surprise and pain as the thug staggered backward, eyes wide with disbelief, his phone clattering to the ground. The suddenness of the attack, the sheer unadulterated force behind it, left him reeling. The streetlights overhead seemed to flicker, casting long, dancing shadows that mimicked the chaos. Mark, meanwhile, moved with the same disciplined ferocity. The thick-necked thug, startled by his companion's sudden collapse, looked up just as Mark delivered a swift, powerful kick to his midsection. The air rushed out of the thug's lungs in a pained wheeze, and he folded over, clutching his stomach, his face a mask of shock and agony. His phone, still recording, spun through the air before landing with a soft thud near Arthur's head. The sudden shift in dynamics was palpable, the hunters now the hunted. The remaining thugs, initially frozen in stunned disbelief, reacted with a mixture of panic and bravado. One swung wildly, a clumsy, desperate punch, that David easily sidestepped, his body twisting with effortless grace. He responded with a short, sharp jab to the solar plexus, followed by a swift knee to the thigh. The thug crumpled, groaning, his earlier arrogance replaced by genuine pain. The street, moments before a stage for cruelty, had become an arena of swift, decisive justice. Another thug, older and seemingly the leader, pulled a switchblade, its blade glinting wickedly under the street lamp. His eyes, now filled with a desperate fear, flickered from David to Mark, realizing the sheer, overwhelming competence of their adversaries. This wasn't just a random brawl. These men were professionals. He lunged, a desperate, clumsy thrust, but David was already anticipating it. He parried the attack with a practiced block, disarming the thug with a twist of his wrist, the blade clattering harmlessly to the ground. Blow after blow was met with pinpoint precision. There was no wasted motion, no theatrics, just a series of swift, effective strikes that systematically dismantled the thug's aggression. They were not fighting street brawlers, they were fighting trained warriors. The bystanders, who had only moments before been passive observers, now watched in stunned silence, their collective breath held. The muffled hum of distant traffic was the only sound besides the thud of impacts and the sharp cries of the thugs. Arthur, still on the ground, watched the unfolding scene with a mixture of disbelief and a surging unfamiliar hope. He had been so utterly helpless, so utterly alone. Now these two men, like avenging angels, had appeared from the shadows, their movements, a stark contrast to the clumsy brutality of his tormentors. His heart, which had been a leaden weight in his chest, began to beat with a renewed rhythm, a fragile flutter of possibility. The pungent odor of sweat and adrenaline mingled under the streetlights. Within minutes, it was over. The thugs lay scattered, groaning, incapacitated but not seriously injured, their bravado shattered. David and Mark stood over them, breathing heavily but steadily, their eyes scanning the street for any lingering threats. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the whimpers of the subdued thugs. Mark knelt beside Arthur, his voice low and steady, a comforting rumble that cut through the veteran's lingering shock. "Hold still, sir, I've got you." David reappeared, not empty-handed. He held two sturdy bamboo crutches, their golden wood gleaming softly in the lamplight. He must have found them in a nearby shop, a testament to his quick thinking and unwavering resolve. He gently helped Arthur to his feet, guiding his trembling hands to the new supports. The veteran's fingers, rough and scarred, brushed against the smooth, resilient bamboo, a stark contrast to the splintered wood that had betrayed him moments before. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of profound kindness. As Arthur stood, his weight carefully distributed on the new crutches, he looked from David's resolute face to Mark's steady gaze. A lifetime of quiet dignity, momentarily shattered, began to reassert itself. He raised his trembling hand, a gesture of profound gratitude, and offered a slow, grateful salute. The weight of his renewed hope settled in his heart, warm and encompassing. The veteran's trembling hand closed around renewed hope,